Wow, thank you. But you have to tell me that the last one when she's finished. You have to tell me when she's finished, though, because this one doesn't need any. But maybe yours can just. I should rather do it now because otherwise I forget. And yours can just cut off the first section.
Okay. Thanks for the water.
Okay, give me a bracha.
Welcome. Thank you for joining our pirkei shiur. Le'ilu nishmat Rabbi Avraham Chaim ben Eliezer Yaakov, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and Goldie Miriam ben Avraham Chaim Zichrona Livracha. May they intercede on high on behalf of all of us. Over to you, Dor.
Thanks, Kai. And before we start, I take the opportunity to extend to Kai and David a hearty mazel tov on the birth of your grandson, your newest addition, Kain Yevu, to Eli and Batsheva. Mazel tov should be zecher to bring him to Bris Shel Avraham Avinu v'itoi uvizmano, and to raise him in good health and happiness. It's a simcha for you. It's a simcha for the whole family. It's a simcha for all of us. Be'ezrat Hashem, and mazel tov to my mom, also on this wonderful, wonderful occasion. Also, my sister Tziona and Steve made a bar mitzvah this week. To my mom and to the family, Be'ezrat Hashem, only simchas. We're on pirkei, Mishnah 5b. So the first part of the Mishnah we've begun. Hillel omer al tefroish min hatzibur. Do not separate yourself from the tzibur, which is incredibly timeless to be studying that as we're about to begin with slichas. We're holding by Erev Slichas. Very much the theme of slichas and of our approach to Rosh Hashanah, as we discussed, is with the tzibur. We only get there bzchus the tzibur, and the greatest bzchus we can come to Rosh Hashanah haba aleinu l'tova with is the bzchus of Klal Yisrael. And it was very much a great theme of Dad's. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. In some cultures, they say, mind your own business. As Dad used to say, you are my business. Certainly with finesse, certainly with great sensitivity, but we are each other's business. We are one. We are Klal Yisrael. Yisrael, Oraisa, and Kutshavrichu are one. Remember when we were in high school, Dad used to give a series of Friday Musa Sichos. It was a Musa Sicha, but as we mentioned previously, he used to call them a fireside chats, which was so named after the American president who maintained the core, the esprit de corps, the strength, the morale of the American people through the Second World War, through his fireside chats. He shared with them his vision. So this is where Dad shared a lot of his vision, and he often came back to this theme. The famous mashal that's brought in the Midrash of a passenger on a ship who started to drill under his seat. And the passengers around him, understandably, said, "What are you doing, Mr. Goodness?" He said, "What do you mean? I paid, it's my seat, it's my ticket. How can you tell me what to do? It's my seat, I'm drilling under my seat, I'm not drilling under your seat." And of course the folly is, it's one ship. We're all in this together. And we need to get there together. And the best way to get there is, Dad taught and lived, the bzchus of Klal Yisrael, the bzchus of the tzibur. No finer investment that one can make any time, and particularly as we approach Yamim Noraim. And the tzibur includes tzaddikim, beinanim, reshoim, because perhaps why does Hashem want reshoim even to be part of the tzibur? Perhaps they'll have better children, and a chain is a chain. They're all linked together. The kedusha of this great nation, Klal Yisrael, is built up of a series of links. Any one of them breaks, any one of them is out, the Sefer Torah is missing. So they're all part of the Torah, and we need to be part. We need to have this essential identity of a Yid, being I'm a part of Klal Yisrael. I'm a person, I'm an individual, and I'm a greater individual through my involvement with the Tzibur. So the great no-no, Al Tifrosh, told us here, Al Tifrosh, don't separate from the Tzibur, unless of course the Tzibur is on the wrong track, and that's a different Shaila. But if they're on a good track, you just disagree with them, Al Tifrosh, don't separate yourself, especially now. The next din, the next idea, the next clause that Hillel taught in the Mishnah is, V'al ta'amen ba'atzmecha, do not believe in yourself ad yom moischo, until the day you die. Do not believe in yourself until the day you die. And the question is, why was this one of Hillel's big philosophies? And what's the connection between this and the first clause? In general, the Mishnah is eclectic. It's a collection of different ideas, and it's not so easy to put a theme to it, but let's try. So, Al ta'amin ba'atzmecha, says Hillel, his words reverberate through the generations. Never think that you've arrived safe, you're there. It's always possible to lose it. That's what Hillel is saying. And the one at the first level, at first blush, he's saying, it's never in the bag. Not your Torah, not your morality, not your personality, not your shalom bayis. It's never safe. Even Avraham Avinu, when he was a very old man, Hashem went out of his way, the Gemara tells us, when he was quoting Sarah. Sarah said to herself, my husband is so old, how can I possibly have a child now? And Hashem didn't repeat that to her. Even though his name was Avraham Avinu, he was the model of good behavior, of good midas, of genuine goodness. And even though he was 100 years old, never take the gift of Shalom Bayis for granted. It's never in the bag. It's something you have to work on and strive for till the last day. Remarkable. That's what our Mishnah is saying. It's never in the bag, and truly that's how Dad lived. Really, never ever was too old to compliment Mom, to make her feel good, to go out of his way. He understood. You're never there. That's not how life is. Like Dad often used to say that, quoting one of his favorite American presidents, politicians, who said that every generation has to fight for peace. It's never won on the coattails of the sacrifices of the previous generation. That's just not the way the world works. Each generation is going to have to re-struggle, re-fight for the commitment to what they hold as the American ideal. L'havdil, our Mishnah is telling us, there are values in life. Let's use Shalom Bayis as the perfect model for that. You've never arrived. You have to keep working. Remember the old Rosh Hashiva, I forget who it was, but he was an alter. He had a long white beard, although that happens to even young men these days. But he had a long white beard and he wasn't a young man. And before he came into his home in Yerushalayim, he stopped outside the Dira. He was walking with one of his students, and he looked in his reflection, straightened his attire, straightened his hat. And the Talmud knew that his Rebbe wasn't a vain man at all. He said, Rosh Hashiva is not usually like that. He said, no, I'm going to see the Rebbe's, and I have to look good. I have to look smart. I have to look my best. There you have it. The first blush our Mishnah is saying, values in life, never take for granted, no matter what age, no matter how much you've worked on before, no matter how much credit you have in the bank, how many good deeds you've done until now. They're like glass, as the Gemara says. Torah is like glass, fine crystal. It takes a lot of skill make it, and it can be blown in an instant. One careless word, and it's gone. The Gemara tells of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. He was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years, one of the most righteous people in the generation, clearly. He lost it. He lost it. He lost his Yirah Shamayim. He lost his Torah. Amazing. That's certainly an exception in an extreme case. Clearly, the idea is don't take the precious things for granted. Don't even think that you've hit your peak and that therefore now you just need to maintain. No, that's not how Sayyidi lived. That's not how Dad lived. Always room for accomplishment. Dad used to tell of the one artist who was still practicing it. He was a musician. He was still practicing his art 5, 6, 7 hours a day when he was an elderly fellow already, 80s, maybe even 90. And I asked him, why are you practicing so hard now? Why are you still putting in so much effort? Dad loved the answer. He said, because I think I'm seeing some improvement. To Dad, that was a great message, a message that he lived with. Keep getting better. It's the best way to avoid failure. Keep getting better. Musbahar. To die after 120 on the mountain like Moshe Rabbeinu, not in a retirement village somewhere, climbing higher and higher. Even when a Yid gets to elder age, he has to understand Hashem has you here for a reason. It's not just maintaining. It's not just surviving. There's a reason, a greater refinement of character. Still something that needs to be done. The Gemara tells us in Kiddushin that the whole yom v'yom, each and every single day of a person's life, as long as there's a breath in him, the Yetzer Hara wants to destabilize him and wants to ruin his life, not just keep him from being a tzaddik gomer. It wants to ruin his life. It wants to ruin his life, his stability, his social life, his family life, his relationship with his kids, with his parents, with his grandchildren, with everyone around him. Wants to ruin it all. Every single day, he comes with a new facade. And the Gemara says, if not that Hashem gave special assistance, we wouldn't even be able to cope with it. Every day, till the end of your day, it's still 120. Yaakov Avinu pirkei shleishay b'shalva. He wished to sit in peace at the end of his days. Time to shep a bit of nachas. That's when the story got its worst. The story of Yosef. The Mefarshim write that even in financial terms, a person has to always be nurturing, always be responsible. Shlomo HaMelech, in his old age, he was at least temporarily, and according to some, permanently. He lost it. A person can never take it for granted. There's a great story told in the Chovos HaLevavos of a famous general returning from a very successful campaign. He had become a national hero, and they met him and welcomed him in their thousands of some sort of old-fashioned ticker tape parade. And as he passed through the throngs, his ego was getting bigger and bigger. And finally, at the end, a pious chassid was waiting. And he said to him with a sharp insight and smile, he said, General, welcome back from the small war. And now begins the big war, the Milchama HaGedolah. Why? What did he mean? He meant that fighting an external foe, vanquishing foreign enemies, ultimately is a small war, because they're as frail as you. They're as small as you. You just got to know their weakness. This war that you're fighting now against the pride, the arrogance, the ego, the disruption to a wise man's character, that's the big war, because that's where the big enemy is. He's bigger than you. He's not frail like you. He's not human. The enemy that you face is like an angel. He has superhuman koiches, bigger than a city. Impossible to possibly engage him, to fight him. It's a joke. If not, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would help him. That's the great war, and that war never stops, not for a second. Dad used to say, even in old age, it changes. It changes. Some things are not that urgent anymore. Others become even more urgent. It's to say, money, often people, it gets stronger. It's the last of the urges. Either that or covered, pride. He said, those last of the urges, they become stronger and stronger. In the view of our sages, life is not about ease. It's not about tranquility. It's not about bovine serenity, grazing out your final years on some beautiful meadow, watching endless sunsets. That's not how the sages captured life. Life is a struggle. It's a struggle to do the right thing and to get better at doing it. The nature of this world isn't ease. It's too much volatility. It's built into the nature of this world. There's uncertainty and volatility and fragility. Then the approach to this world is avoider. Certainly you have to do your avoider with as much ease and a sense of rest and trust and confidence and faith that you can master. But it's not bovine serenity. That's not the nature of this world. What's the connection between this and the first part of the Mishnah of Tifrosh min hatzibur? And perhaps part of the answer is, part of the insight is that as long as you're part of the tzibur, even when you think that your full powers are not with you anymore, you're still an important, vital component in the tzibur. Whatever you are doing from whatever corner you are, you don't have to be the hunter. You're representing an era, time, experience, wisdom that changes the whole of Klal Yisrael. As long as you plug into this tzibur, you have an immense value to play. Immense. The story is told about Rav Shach, who in his elder years, his koiches weren't with him anymore. He went from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim to meet Rabbi Elyashiv, who was the Posek Hador. Final, he was the last word in all halachic matters. And Rav Shach had the derech eretz, the courtesy for Rabbi Elyashiv, that if he had a shaila, a personal shaila, he didn't phone him. He got into a car and he made the trek to Yerushalayim well into his 90s. And he went to see Rabbi Elyashiv and he said to him, Rabbi Elyashiv, I have a personal shaila. I still live in the yeshiva's apartment, but I can't give shiurim anymore. Is it just? Is it right? And Rabbi Elyashiv naturally ruled, yes, of course, it's right, Rosh Yeshiva. It's the right thing. So he said, but I'm not giving anymore. I can't give my shiurim. How can I do that? He said, are you just trying to make me feel better? Or is it emes halacha? He said, because after 120 years, I'm going to come up to the Beis Din and I'm going to tell them, Rabbi Yosef Shalom Elyashiv Paskin from me. He said, it's a psak halacha. You don't need to be giving your shiurim. By your very personality of who you are changing the entire environment of the yeshiva. You represent something that without you, chas v'shalom, they don't have. Don't believe in yourself. It's only me as an individual, me the hunter, the grabber. No, don't do that. Let your personal identity develop as an individual, but part of this wonderful setting called Klal Yisrael. I'd like to move a little bit more quickly on the third clause of our Mishnah. And to not judge your fellow until you stand in his place, until you reach his place. And as Dad used to say, that really means never judge your fellow, because you can never truly stand in somebody else's place. Because to stand in his place means to know his entire experience of life, his strengths, his weaknesses, his challenges, his exposure. You can never know that. And therefore, al tadin eschavercha. Don't truly judge anyone. There's a fascinating Gemara that tells of an exchange between the Amora Abaye, who's one of the most frequently cited Amoraim in the Talmud Bavli. If not every daf, then every 4 daf. Him and Rova, Abaye and Rova are mentioned, debating. And in a dream, he met the unrighteous King Manasseh. And this King Manasseh, the infamous King Manasseh, was not a positive influence in Klal Yisrael at all. In the dream, King Manasseh HaMelech, he taught Abaya a halacha which Abaya was not even aware of. And Abaya turned to him and said, "Oh, Zoe, King Manasseh is such a Talmid Chacham. How did you go wrong? How did you spend your life on the futility of idolatry? How can a smart man do that?" And King Manasseh said to him, "Abaye, had you been there, you would have picked up your cloak so that you could run more easily to the idolatry. You don't know what the challenges of Avodah Zarah were like in my time." The Anshe Knesset HaGadol davened, and a miracle happened that there's no longer a Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. But in King Manasseh's time, it was the most overwhelming Yetzer Hara. It's just an example that the Meforshim bring of Al Taddin Escharecha. Even if you know that your friend's behavior is incorrect and is wrong, don't judge him. Judge the behavior. Judge the action, not the man. Play the ball, as we were taught as kids, not the man. Rabbi Levi Eger, son of the great Rabbi Akiva Eger, said it in his way. Al tadines chavercha, don't judge your friend, ad shetagia linkoimoi. His place is his world. We all live in our own world. Truly, our individual, our world is inner-based. The dimensions of our world are really inside. No one lives in the same world as anyone else. You will never occupy his space, and therefore don't judge him. And perhaps this is part of the theme of our Mishnah. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Don't separate yourself, not to make yourself an icon, a distinct, separate entity from Klal Yisrael. It's got to be a negative. And don't write off other people from Klal Yisrael either, even if their behavior is wanting. Leave the person intact. Out the ball. Judge the deed, the action, not the man. The man is part of Klal Yisrael. This is crucial in these days leading up to Rosh Hashanah. Elul, the Heilige month of Elul, the Shofar and the David Hashem. And the truth is, whatever one learns in Elul, whenever one gives a shir in Elul, you have to think of it through the Elul spectacles, through the glasses of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And we learn, Shoftim v'shoitrim, the Torah taught us in 2 weeks ago, the Pasha, Titen lecha b'chol sharecha. You get to appoint the judges, b'chol sharecha, in all your gates. Sharei shamayim. In human courts, you're going to a trial, you can't appoint the judges. That would be inappropriate. That would be a catastrophe for justice. But in the heavenly courts, in the Rosh Hashanah court, you and I determine the judgment, the attitude of the judges. Why? If we are benevolent judges to other people, we judge them righteously, we give them the benefit of the doubt, that's the way they're going to look at us. So Shoftim v'Shotrim, the weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah, we are preparing the judgment. Rabbi Chaim writes one of the fascinating insights that he says about Lashon Hara, the harm of speaking Lashon Hara is that it comes back to us. Because when you damn somebody for something that he did, in Shamayim they're going to take note that that's your opinion. And then when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and they scrutinize the books and they say, but wait a minute, let's apply his rule to himself. The way we judge others, we live in a world where everyone wants a segula for success, for achievement. There is nowhere that we need greater achievement in Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. The segula is in the Gemara. You're good to others, you're benevolent, you judge them favorably. It's our Mishnah. Al tadin es chavercha shetagir. Don't judge the man. And I'd just like to conclude now. This is something that my mom often says about Dad. Somebody pointed it out, that no matter who was in a meeting and who they were meeting with, as long as Dad was around the table, they felt safe. They knew that somebody had their back. Doesn't matter if they'd even made a mistake. They knew that somebody was there who was not going to take advantage of them and wouldn't let, if he could help it, anybody else to take advantage of it. So V'ezrat Hashem, take our Mishnah with us, this Mishnah of the beauty of Klal Yisrael, and so for 3 ways. Al tifresh min hatzibur, don't separate. Don't create a personality of yourself distinct from the tzibur total. You have to be part of it. And al tadin es chavercha. Let's be benevolent to others, and b'ezrat Hashem we should be zoiche together to a shana tova u'mezuka, a good gebench year, a sweet year.
Amen. Thank you for those beautiful words of wisdom.